Welcome to Season 3, Episode 2 of the My Green Home Lawrence project, a modern, luxurious, eco-friendly ship and container home. My name is Christopher Lawrence, and this is the story of my journey. To view this episode and all previous episodes, download the Digicel Playgo app. I've included a link in the description. So you and I both know, in this episode, we're supposed to feature the land surveyors. Unfortunately, I had to push that back to the 21st of July. We'll talk about what happened and why it happened then. Today, we feature the animator. Trinidad and Tobago is currently under a state of emergency with a 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. curfew. All non-essential activities have been suspended until further notice, including construction. This is as the government tries to deal with the spread of this deadly virus and roll out a nationwide vaccination program. At the time of the filming of this episode, we had more than 9,000 active cases and more than 650 deaths. I pray for the full recovery of all infected and condolences to the family and friends of those lost to this deadly pandemic. People, let's do what we must to beat this. In episode 2 of season 2, I shared the first animation of the project, which was 2 single-bedroom apartment buildings. Subsequently, in episode 3 of season 2, I shared the animation of a complete 2.5 bath, 3-bedroom home. During these episodes, I introduced the 3D animator, Mr. Henry Mbata from South Africa. Henry and I have been working on this project since 2016. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Henry.
Hello and welcome to HenryTheJedi.com. My name is Henry the Jedi, and today I'll be discussing with you one of the exciting projects that I was privileged enough to work on. And this involves the creating of an animation for a container home all the way in the beautiful little island or little islands of Trinidad and Tobago. This was a wonderful collaboration between myself and Mr. Christopher Lawrence, who is based right there in the islands of Trinidad and Tobago. HenryTheJedi.com is basically a media marketing company which I own, and I offer various creative services all the way from logo design to editing videos and marketing videos to making commercials and to making 3D animated videos for product adverts, for national elections adverts. So it's a very, very broad spectrum of creative services that I offer. All right. I also do music production. Basically, all the songs that you hear in my videos, I think for the past 2 years, have been created by me. All right, because sound is half of any creative video. In the year 2016, I'll never forget I'd gotten an email from Mr. Christopher in Trinidad in which he asked whether I could offer my services as a 3D animator for a concept home that he was busy proposing. All right, and then it was very interesting because not often I get emails from the United States or Europe and so forth. So it was the first time that I got an email from someone from Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Christopher announced to me that this was a concept project and it was going to involve the recreation of things using the power of 3D animation, because this was still a concept that he wanted to build in real life.
I found Henry on YouTube after viewing a couple 3D animations of homes and tracing them back to the publisher. It was really interesting working with someone thousands of miles away. So I asked Henry a little bit about his hometown and about South Africa, and this is what he had to say.
Okay, South Africa, I hope most of you still remember the year 2010. That was when South Africa basically hosted the FIFA World Cup in the year 2010. It was a very exciting time. This is, of course, the land of Nelson Mandela. All right, it's a very, very diverse country with people from different backgrounds, from different religions, and so forth. So it's very vibrant, so to speak. All right. And then my hometown, okay, I grew up in the Congo, okay, in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, in the capital city of Kinshasa, all right? That is basically where I grew up. But before then, I was born in a village in Benachadi in the Kasai province. All right. So it was when my father moved to South Africa to pursue his studies. It was after then that he then called us to join him here in South Africa. HenryTheJedi.com is my company. I started it in the year 2008. All right. That was just before, of course, at the start of the famous economic crisis that struck the world. All right. So I started it as a means to teach people what I knew, the little that I knew back then. All right. So I started by teaching Adobe After Effects and a few tricks that I could teach here and there. And then from there it evolved. I then thought, you know what, let me also teach 3D production, because there is only so much 2D animation and 2D video editing can achieve. Meanwhile, with the power of 3D, anything becomes possible. All right. So that's when I began to teach people all over the world 3D Studio Max. And then things have evolved. I also learned music production, and also now I'm also teaching side effect Houdini. All right. And it has been quite an interesting journey, I have to say, you know, because I've gotten the chance to deal with people from all backgrounds, people from all levels of education, all right, and people, of course, from all continents. It has been very, very humbling experience. And also, as a note here, everything that I teach, I taught myself as well. I don't have a formal education for what I do. The certification that I have is from Autodesk, in which I'm a certified Autodesk 3D Studio Max professional. So I do render several creative services, from logo design to video editing, and of course all the way to full-blown 3D animated videos. All right. And besides that, I also compose music, because sound is half of any production. All right. So and then also from time to time I also design websites and business cards and so forth, because creativity doesn't know boundaries. What I always do in any project, I always maintain a very open channel of communication. All right. So that means I normally set up email account and so forth. That way I'm in constant touch with the client and in every step of the way. All right. So that means even if it meant updating Mr. Christopher on a daily basis with updates, I was going to do exactly that, because it's very critical that the client is sharing with you the same final vision of what his video must be. All right. The client must be happy with the way the colors look, the way the lighting is looking, the way, you know, the whole product is going to look in the end. Hence, the very importance of keeping Mr. Christopher updated throughout the design process all the way to the rendering. And then what means of communications have we used? So as I mentioned, emails and also WhatsApp, because it provided direct communication as well. It's easy to share pictures, it's easy to share updates. So that's what was happening. And also for file sharing, what I normally did was I would upload the videos onto my website, and then I will send Mr. Christopher direct links that you will just click and then be able to download the videos as and when he needs them. All right.
I asked Henry, has the animation industry in South Africa been affected by COVID-19? His response was,
well, COVID-19, this terrible pandemic, has affected industries across the world. One thing that I've noticed though is that more and more people are looking for the experts in their field of expertise. That means people are not willing necessarily to look for amateurs or people who are just starting up, which is a problem, because remember, we all started from somewhere. So I would wish everyone is still an equal opportunity to be part of this creative process. All right. So I would say that has been the impact of COVID-19 all over the world. All right, because people cannot meet anymore necessarily. So that means they completely rely on online communications, on phone calls. So hence they need, to have a very good portfolio out there for you to stand out. All right.
Did COVID-19 affect any part of our project?
Yes, absolutely, Mr. Christopher. COVID-19 did affect our several aspects of our project, because now there are several deadlines to meet. All right, so it means prioritizing has never been more important. It meant that if Mr. Christopher's project had to take 1 week, it really had to be rendered in 1 week, because there is a queue of other clients waiting for their works to be delivered. So that is the kind of impact that this pandemic has had on our workflow.
I remember when we spoke about it, you guys were experiencing the first wave of COVID-19 back then.
Yes, indeed, we spoke about that, and luckily, because I kept in constant communication with Mr. Christopher, not a week went by without him having something as an update to be sure that his project was on its way.
So we were two guys from different parts of the world working together on my dream, the My Green Home Lawrence project. So let's get into some detail. I'll start with what Henry asked me to provide.
The most important thing was for Mr. Christopher Lawrence to provide me with CAD data or architectural blueprints of his building. Alright, because I needed that way all the dimensions of the rooms, the walls, the ceilings, all those had to be accurate, because let's not forget, this construction had to be built in real life. So I couldn't just use imaginary dimensions. Alright, so Mr. Christopher did provide a CAD file which I then built upon.
And then I asked Henry, was this your first shipping container project?
Absolutely. And what was very strange was when I first opened the file, nothing was giving away the fact that this was a container home. Like you would see, it looks just like an ordinary home. It's got 4 walls, you know, it's livable. Up until I began to rotate the file in 3D space, that's when I began to pick up that, wait a minute, we are dealing with a container here. And it's so beautiful in the fact that it doesn't immediately hit you that it's a container home. It's only afterwards. So it feels like a true home.
And what were the differences in comparison to what you normally do?
Okay, I would say not much different except in the scale. All right, this is one of the big, in terms of scale, in terms of assets, in terms of objects that I had to build. This was a big one, because let's not forget, besides building the walls, the ceilings, the floors, the carpentry, I also had to include furniture and lighting, all right, and toiletry, you see. So all those elements is what made the scale very much big.
Approximately how long did each animation take?
Well, it really depends, because when you see the video, when we are still outside the home, as we drive in with the car, it actually renders much faster, because maybe there's not too many objects at that time. But as soon as the house has completely built up, and then we move inside the home, into the individual rooms, that is where then the render times skyrocket. They even quadruple. All right. For instance, when you watch the video, when we are in the lounge, in the living room, it was taking about 10 minutes per frame to render. So you can imagine how long it must have taken to render so many hundreds of frames just for the living room alone. All right, because that is why in the end it ended up taking like almost an entire week just to render the living room. In other words, for each room which is enclosed, like with 4 walls and lighting coming from the ceiling or so, it takes much longer than when we are outside. All right, so that is how the render times vary. That is why sometimes Mr. Christopher will ask, how long do I think I'll be done with such and such a camera angle? And again, you can't really predict, because as the computer renders, it comes across different challenges. All right, so you cannot always predict how things go. But the golden rule of thumb is that the more dark a room is, the more it's lit up by other artificial lights and so forth, the longer it tends to take than when you're rendering outside.
All right, so now take us through the process. Give us a brief timeline, and then we will talk a little about the rendering.
So here is in a nutshell how this project went about. All right, I received the CAD files from Mr. Christopher, and then based on the CAD files that he gave me, I was then able to open it in the software that I use called Houdini. All right, then from that CAD file open in Houdini, I then had to build the entire home around it from scratch. I had to do that because everything had to look as if it's building up from scratch. You understand? So I used the model he provided me as a guideline, and then upon which I built everything. All right, so as to describe it again, so I got the file from Mr. Christopher, I built the home around it, and then from there I had to build all the additional elements, such as the land where the home will be, you see, with the hills and so forth, and even with the foundation upon which this home will be resting. I then had to build furniture as well, as you see in the video, because even the furnitures come in. I had to create the lights that had to come in there. So basically, those are all the objects that one has to build. Then from there, it was then a matter of what you call texturing. This is the part where you add colors or materials to everything. So all the doors, all the furniture, all the walls, that is then the part where all the colors are added. And by the way, that is done after all the actual building of the home is complete, because that is the way in which things have to flow. First to build, then you add colors. And then once the part of adding the colors is complete, that is then the part where I then add lighting, okay? So that is where I put lights in each of the individual rooms. I put the sun, that way it can illuminate all over the entire landscape, all right? Then once the lighting is done, that is then the part where I add all the little additional elements that could be missing. Things such as the grass that you see. I don't know how many thousands, if not millions of blades of grass are in this video. And then we get to the trees, and they are in the millions of little leaves that are there in order to look as busy as possible. That way it doesn't look as if the home is lost in the middle of nowhere. So it's all thanks to the vegetation, all right? So I did the vegetations, and then of course I also then prepared the car as well, all right, to come in. So after all those elements are done, then we then get to the part of animation. And this is the part where, as I said, everything has to be animated. From the doors swinging into action, the furniture rolling in, the lighting turning on, the beds, the mattresses falling into place, as you see in the video. This is the part where that the animation has to cover. And of course, including the car moving into the picture, the trees rising. That is all part of the animation process. And this is the part where it's very important also to know how to set up your timing, because not everything builds up at once. As you see in the video, things have their own time and place, all right? Then, after having created all the animations of the elements, then I have to create the cameras that have to be recording all these things which are happening. Because remember, it's one thing to have your animations building up, but it's another to have a nice camera capturing exactly what is happening. All right. So this is a part where I lay out several. I think in this scene I might have even more than 20 cameras that had to be there just to record these beautiful animations. All right. Then after having finished with the cameras, this is the part then when I then begin the rendering process in the 3D software. And at this stage, the 3D software creates thousands of image sequences, which I will then use in my video editing software. All right. So I never risk rendering a video right out of my 3D software, because if there was a power cut, you lose everything, no matter how long it had been taking to render. All right. So as I said, after setting up the cameras, then we produce a bunch of image sequences, which I then take to a video editing software, where I will then import all those camera angles of the image sequences into the video editing software, and then I place them in a nice timeline. That way I can decide which camera comes first and so forth. And then at that stage also, I then also take a few days to just think about the music that will drive the entire animation, because the music is half of what you see and feel. It's not just the visuals, all right? So I then bring in the music, and then after having done that, I can then create a final video as an MP4 or MOV format, depending on what the client might have in mind, all right? So it's quite an interesting process as for each step that is taken, but each step is crucial. You cannot jump one over the other.
I remember us waiting days for the rendering process to be complete, and that's with your supercomputer. For someone wanting to do 3D animations, what are the specs you would recommend?
This is a very critical question because it does not matter what vision you might have in your mind. It does not matter what brilliant idea you might have had on how you wanted to animate something if you do not have the correct hardware to make it an actual possibility. So that is why I had to invest in a very high-end computer that I'm using. The specifications are as follows. The CPU is the most important, one of the most important components, if not the most important component, of course. The CPU I have is an Intel Core i7 CPU with 6 cores and 12 threads. Each, I think, is running up at about 3.4 gigahertz. And then up next, the RAM, very critical. There is no way you can deal with such amount of data and not have somewhere where the computer can manage it. So that is why I had to buy at least 32 gigabytes of computer memory just to handle such heavy scenes. Alright? Then right up next, we have graphics cards, because none of this was going to be possible if I did not have the power of graphics cards to render. Alright, and for the graphics cards, I have two NVIDIA RTX 2070 super cards. Each of them has got 8 gigabytes of RAM. Alright, and it's always a beauty to see them, you know, sitting side by side, you know, crunching numbers, you know, making things happen. That way I can have my renders and send it to clients. Alright, so that is for the graphics cards. And then for the storage, I have an NVMe SSD, which is a solid state drive, which enables me to launch the computer very quickly. I'm able to launch all the programs that I use regularly very quickly without having to wait for too long, because believe you me, as the work becomes stressful, even how long you take to launch a software can get frustrating. Alright? Then I've got several 8 terabyte hard drives. I think I've got 4 of them, and they are responsible for dealing with all the outputs that come out of the renders. So all the image sequences go into external hard drives. That way the computer is set to focus on what matters, on just getting the renders going. Alright, and so that is the hardware which is with the computer. And then also, it's also very important which hardware you use to interact with the computer. And for that purpose, I've got a wireless mouse, a Logitech one. It's very nice. It's not like, it's a mid-range one, I would say, but it gets the job done. But most importantly is the mouse, because I have this, I don't know if you can see there, a professional Logitech mouse. All right. With this one, what I like is that I'm able to program certain commands which are too repetitive on the computer. Like I can set it to, you know, let's say if I was to save a file, I can set this to have, I can set 2 buttons here to trigger that action. That way I don't have always to go to file, save as. So that is the kind of stress this kind of equipment can remove out of your workflow. That way you can focus on being productive. All right. So that basically, I think, should cover what the computer specifications are.
I sincerely thank you for all the work that you have done throughout the project, and more appreciation for the time you spent to contribute to this episode. I officially invite you to Trinidad and Tobago to view the project as soon as this COVID thing clears up.
And I would just like to thank Mr. Christopher Lawrence for having given me such a great opportunity to have collaborated with him on this innovative container home project. I hope this kind of idea is implemented across the world, because as you know, not having a home is a major challenge that the entire planet is suffering from. So I hope your idea, Mr. Lawrence, is implemented all over the world, because it's sustainable, it's practical, and of course, it's very cost effective. And thank you so much for having made me part of your productive journey. And yeah, looking forward to more collaborations with you in the future. Thank you so much.
Also in the description is a link to the Digicel PlayGo app. Download it and view this episode and all previous episodes of the My Green Home Lawrence project. Remember to check out the 2 animation episodes in season 2. I really hope you enjoyed the information that Henry and I shared in this video. Remember to hit the subscribe button and the bell notification so that every time I upload a new video, you will get a notification. Thanks again for watching, and as we say in Trinidad and Tobago, laters.